Welcome to the third and final day of our 50th anniversary celebration. And let me say straight away that it may be the last day of the conference, but we are hardly finished. We have beginning tonight at 7 o'clock at the Lemley Theaters, the Common Good International Film Festival. And that's going to be continuing on for a few days. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to speak with you. And a lot of excellent films. In fact, 10 process relational films are going to be played over the next few days. So if you have interest, please join us. It's going to be an excellent event. Well, I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Gunna Young, an economist, a professor of Hanshin University in South Korea, and a research fellow of the Ecological Civilization in Korea project at the Center for Process Studies. He's on the steering committee of the 60-plus Climate Action Korea, as well as chairman of the Lab 2050. Dr. Young received his PhD in Seoul National University with a major in labor economics, and has expanded his interests at the local economic level in community building, the issues of aging, circular economy, and he's currently interested in ecological transformation. He's been involved in nonprofit think tanks for over 30 years, and for the past 10 years has been actively involved in collaborative public-private partnerships with Seoul Metropolitan Government and the Office of Seoul Education in order to promote local sustainable development and the empowerment of communities. So today, Dr. Young will be moderating our session on economies and communities for the common good. Dr. Young.
Hello, good morning. This is Gunna Young from Korea. Yeah, I'm very exceptional participants who came to this location directly from other country, far from. Yeah, I crossed the Pacific Ocean. Yeah. I'm an economist, as I was introduced, and facilitating today's first session. I'm very excited to meet many colleagues and friends that I have known for many years, again, like in person. By the way, congratulations again to Professor John Kopp on his 98th birthday and 5th anniversary of the Center for Process Studies. I have to say this, for I am here representing many white-head researchers in Korea and EcoCiv Korea members in Seoul, Korea. So now back to my role as a moderator, let me introduce the first speaker, Megan Anderson. She has a background in mathematics and theology. In 2019, she received her MA from Claremont School of Theology, studying interdisciplinary studies with a concentration in religion, society, and social change. In graduate school, Megan worked for the Institute of Ecological Civilization. Megan comes to her work as CHERP, taking an intersectional approach to everything. The title of her presentation today is A Future in Process, Energy and Economics in Service for the Common Good. Please welcome Megan.
I'm very short. Also,
Is that correct, Megan? Her name is
perfect.
Megan.
Thank you so much for the introduction. As you said, I'm talking about energy, equity, and economy in service to the common good. And I wanted to start with this slide to kind of emphasize this is the state of the world that we currently live in. In California, we've seen the fires We've seen the droughts. We've seen massive storms across the world. We've also seen people without jobs. We've seen war. Like the world itself, and I don't need to tell any of you, but the world itself is in crisis. And it's created a lot of moral crises along with it. So I've talked to a lot of people my age, a lot of young women, and there's a moral qualm about even bringing new kids into the world. It's something I think about a lot. You know, like if I bring a child in, what is the world that I'm bringing them into? What is the world that my 3-year-old niece is going to live in? And I start with this because it has everything to do with the common good and the world that we're creating. And it's really a frame, I think, for a lot of discussion and a lot of the application of the work that all of you have been doing and talking and learning about over the past few days. So the question is there common good in our common home? And I think the answer is definitely yes, but there needs to be more of it. It needs to be cultivated. It needs to be grown. It needs to extend deeper within our local communities. So as mentioned earlier, the title of my presentation is A Future in Process, Economics in Service of the Common Good. And what I'll kind of be describing is one way the organization I work with, the Community Home Energy Revolution Project, or CHERP for short, is working to bring common good to the local communities and our nation through these 3 areas. So when I was thinking about this presentation, I was like, what does the common good look like to me? If I had to imagine the common good, this is the image that comes to mind. So it's the garden at the bay in Singapore. It includes solar, those big trees, mega trees up there, they're powered by solar. They have biomass boiler systems, they have rainwater harvesting, they have community events and programs. Like, obviously Singapore and nowhere in the world is perfect, but when you look at that, integration with nature, that feels to me like the common good, like a place where we're living in a way that is beneficial for our communities and the earth. So here, these are just a few principles that I think describe the common good. It's not exhaustive by any means, but you have knowledge and education, you have dignity in your work, you have access to green space and beauty, you're able to express yourself artistically, you have a flourishing, well-being economy, there's respect, equity, and justice at the heart of the work we do, and there's connection among our community members and access to the vital resources we need to survive and flourish. I'm going to touch on these as I go throughout my conversation. Obviously, there's more that you could add to this list. And to begin with, I want to touch a little bit on well-being economy first, because this is at the heart of a lot of what CHERP it wants to do. So, as many of you know, our economy right now is focused on profit and GDP. How much money can we make regardless of the expense to people or the earth? And when we're talking about well-being economy, we're talking about expanding well-being and climate and restoration and focusing on not GDP, but the well-being of society. So sometimes you'll see this in what's called the Cleveland model or circular economies. And I'll talk more about that later in the presentation in terms of how CHERP is distributing energy and trying to rebuild our local economies through our work. So CHERP stands for, the Community Home Energy Revolution Project, because we're trying to change the way energy is created and distributed in our societies. So the focus is on building energy equity, resiliency, economic vitality through a model that focuses on localized solar production in a nonprofit model. So we're giving back constantly to the community. So we have 4 goals Obviously, we're working with solar, so we want to address global warming. We want to bring Black, middle-class, living wage jobs into our communities, particularly for those who have been left behind, who face barriers into the workforce, who've been underserved and neglected in many ways. We want to stimulate the local economies, help them flourish, that whole well-being economy model. And finally, we want to do everything with a focus on justice and equity. So how does CHERP do this? First, so we've started a nonprofit solar panel assembly factory in Pomona. It's right on Holt. It's in the same area as the swap meet. If you know Pomona at all, you can come visit, come see it. And there we're going to create the most advanced solar panel currently available in the world. I don't want to spend a lot of time on technology, but I'll say the inventor, he woke up one day and he realized at one point all of his patents had been monetized overseas. So during the Great Recession, he's like, man, I was a large contributor to this process because everything is being monetized. So our jobs are leaving, our money is leaving the economy, and I want to bring it back. So when he was looking at this new solar technology that makes panels safer, it makes them more efficient, it allows us to use less rare minerals in the panels, he's like, I want to do that here. So I'm creating access and jobs and opportunity for the communities in my country that need them most. We can go into a long conversation if people have questions, but I'll leave it there. And then second, a blended nonprofit for-profit business model, often known as a social enterprise. So using the profits you make, not to become wealthy individually, but to reinvest them in your community. Once again, you're circulating dollars, you're creating a circular economy, and you're helping people that need it most. And again, adding these two together, you're maximizing the benefits for the local community. So this is a picture of our factory in Pomona. What I love to emphasize when I'm showing this slide is that there's artwork and color everywhere. So that big sun rainbow mural was painted by a local artist in Pomona. It's hard to see so far away, but there's other local art also placed around the factory. And the goal was twofold. One, earlier we talked about art and beauty in terms of well-being and the common good. We want to place that inside the factory. Community connectedness. We want the factory to feel like it's a part of the Pomona community, not something that just has come in and exists there. And secondly, when you work in a space or you speak or sit in a space that's beautiful, you feel better, you're more productive, you're happy. And that's how we want people to feel as they're working in the factory. Like, I come from Wisconsin, and we have glass factories, and they're hot, and they're dark, and they're not fun whatsoever. I clicked the wrong button by accident. Sorry, Andrew. Thank you. They're not pleasant to be inside at all. Like, you don't get up and enjoy going to work in a place that's dark and hot and feels like a gray concrete box. Coming into a space that has color and reminds you of the community you came from is a whole different story. So there's a model around what we can do with energy, and there's also a model around how factories can exist in the United States and what they can be to make life more happy for the people working there. Secondly, the way CHERP will operate in Pomona is we are a workforce development center. So the goal in terms of producing panels is also coupled with let's train people so they have the skills to be leaders in the green movement that we're seeking to create. So when we bring people in, 75% of our workforce will be transitional, so focusing on hard-hit populations like veterans, people with diverse abilities, at-promise youth, folks who have been involved in the justice system. Again, folks who have been often neglected, left behind, and even ostracized to some degree in society. Bring them in, train them on the various positions inside the factory, show them the career pathways that they can take afterwards, give them certifications, connect them even with like the local electric union, which provides very high quality jobs, and help them get on a path to get from where they are to a life that's sustainable and has meaning for them. And so when we designed this facility, we designed it with people in mind. So you can have a solar factory that's pretty much 100% automated. You need like 3 workers, the panels just run through. And here we've decreased automation. We've only used it where it's necessary and where it's efficient. Like when you're creating a string of cells, you don't want people soldering 40 cells together because it's unpleasant and not efficient. But where we could, we wanted to create jobs so people can work together, they can learn, and they can gain the skills they need to be successful. And that's not the typical model for solar production whatsoever. So earlier I mentioned circular economies, and I want to describe kind of how CHERP is fitting itself into that model. So right now, the way it currently exists around energy is people pay their local utilities for their energy bills. You get a bill from, if you're from Southern California, SoCal Edison, and you pay them for your bill. But SoCal Edison is not really within the economy. So money is constantly leaking out of our economy to utility companies that don't exist or necessarily even care about our local communities. And the way we want to change that is, so Little Chirp House is our logo. The way we can bring money back in is, one, you create like a nonprofit solar module assembly factory like we have in Pomona. And then you work with the anchor institutions, like your schools, your municipal buildings, your hospitals, your libraries, and you set up agreements with them where suddenly they're purchasing your panels and they're purchasing your energy. In Pomona, we have a community choice aggregation, which means the city of Pomona and the businesses in Pomona can choose where they get their energy. If they want renewable energy or they want to buy it from a local source, they can do that. So the anchor businesses get solar, they're purchasing energy from CHERP, and then the profits that CHERP gets, we dump into our workforce development programs and we dump into community solar for the local community members. And so now you have energy bill offsets for low-income families who are struggling. So they have more money to use on their essential spending needs. Their school supplies, their clothing, their food, even just recreation that they deserve to do and often don't have the resources to do it for. And so you have money that's then circulating within your local economy, because when you're spending your money immediately, you're often spending it locally. So you're buying food from your local stores, you're going to your local department stores for clothing. And obviously we want to encourage people to spend with local businesses as well. And we've been working with the city of Pomona to see if there are incentives or coupons or ways we can also incentivize like hyper-local spending within the economy. And so money circles back. You have workers working in the factory, and you have local spending. And so here's, I forgot that this slide has a million different things. But this is a better picture of how the cycle works. So you have money invested in the factory invested in workers and households, you have the retail economy, and you have a circular cycle between people spending money in their economy, which is providing more jobs and more opportunity to the local population, and it just goes round and round rather than folks sending them out to a large utility that is not reinvesting whatsoever back into the local economy. So what does this have to do with process studies? We're at the 50th anniversary of the Center for Process Studies. And I put a wave up here because I learned about process studies when I was an undergrad. It was my junior year. I was taking a course on theological explorations, and that was my first interaction with process studies is through a wave. Because process studies has to do with, here we go. It has to do with the elements of becoming and change through experienced reality. And to me, a wave is the perfect experience. You're ebbing and you're flowing, and you're learning and you're experiencing. And sometimes we have to make a big splash, and we have to disrupt the status quo. So the wave is crashing in because we're going to change, and it's going to make a big splash. And to me, CHERP's model is all about process. It was a long process just to work with the Pomona community to see if this is something that they wanted. It was a process just to prove that we could do this. There were a lot of hurdles that we faced because it's new, because it's making a splash. A lot of people were like, number one, that the technology doesn't work, so we proved it with Harvey Mudd. Number two, they're like, you can't build a factory, and we're like, here's a factory, and now our panels are getting certification this June, and we're going to show how we can train and we can upskill the workforce, and we can be an integral part of the city of Pomona. We can work with the school district, we can work with the college students. We can show how this model works to bring back community wealth and then expand that across California and across the nation. So when I think of process, the idea even of how we expand is a process. So CHERP doesn't want to own hundreds of factories across the United States. What we're doing is we're going to local nonprofits and local communities and saying, like, are you interested, number one, in this? Does it fit your mission? Does it fit the goals you have? 2 minutes? Perfect, almost done. And if it does, let's make this happen. And so as we expand, we're expanding in a way that fits the community it's in. When you're working with local nonprofits, they know their communities. If CHERP just went to another city, we don't know anything. If it's in Buffalo, New York, we know nothing about their community. But when you access the anchor institutions and the community benefit organizations and other places and have them be the people who own and operate these facilities, they're going to operate in a way that benefits the people that they serve the most. And then finally, this is just a list of some of the communities that we're currently in conversation with, and there's also a number of tribes, including the Seneca Nation, and the Zuni tribe in New Mexico, and the Palo Band of Mission Indians here in San Diego. So there, you can see as we have this network, you're creating literally an energy revolution, because your local communities now have control over their energy, and they can serve their communities, they can create their jobs, and create a new way to distribute and create energy in our communities in a way that's grounded in the common good. I'll skip this just for time's sake, but Los Angeles has a goal of 10 gigawatts of new renewable energy in the state, and that would take 30 million solar panels. And right now, because most solar panels are made overseas, all that money is going out of the economy. So if we establish a network of factories, it would take 15 to meet their goal by 2045. You're bringing all that money back, you're bringing jobs back, and you're reinvesting that money locally. So to end, this is a part of our team. If you ever want to come visit, we'd love to see you, love to give you a tour, love to talk more, but that's it.